Freedom is very fragile. It's more fragile when we don't know the truth. You're about to be part of FramersView, where truth is the foundation of every day's program. Join us live every weekday right here on Rumble at 1 p.m. Eastern. Now, here's Neil Frame on FramersView.
Click on subscribe, click on like, click on everything. Click. That's what everybody says, but I need your help. Welcome to the show. This is it, man. Boy, we had an interesting night last night, but not in the way you might think, not in my opinion. And here's why I say this. There's a certain number of people that vote in almost any election, whether it's a primary or a national or a local election. There's a certain amount of interest in who's voting that makes a difference in how many vote. And, I think that this main situation is going to be interesting. We'll get into that here in a few minutes, but it's definitely interesting. Yesterday was a big hearing, SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Clinic. This is just the best example of we've got our tail caught in the door on the way out with SLPC. These guys have done so much bad, and the guy that's in charge of it is actually named Fair. His last name is Fair. Yesterday wasn't a good day for him. He was asked a lot of questions he really didn't want to have to answer. And, those things happen. I get it. But if you're not doing something stupid, crazy, out of control, probably won't happen. But here's the thing. We're having these little primaries, and there's people that like people that don't like people that don't care about people that vote for people that they don't know, people that vote because they know the people, even though they're bad. I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities. And you'd like to think, kind of like I liken it to the Supreme Court. You'd like to think that the Supreme Court would make decisions and rulings based on, hold on a second here. I've got two copies of it. Yes, it's called the Declaration of Constitution, and here's another one. It's what those guys with the white hair back in 1700s were smart enough to do. How'd they do that? Oh, it was experience. But here's the thing. I would suggest that the people that voted for George Washington and every president up to number 47, you might know that guy. His name is Donald Trump. And all of those people that voted for all of these candidates over the years, guess what? You go back to the 1800s and before, 1700s, 1800s, before there was radio. The only way you knew anything about the election was if you happened to go someplace where the politician was, and he's talking someplace in a bar or out in the mud or wherever he was, or you had the few times that you actually saw a newspaper or a flyer, and that's all you saw. And what was the truth? And if something, the October surprise, they'd have to bring out the October surprise in September for somebody to know about it before the election. The election wasn't in November back in those days. But the point is, when the election was going to occur, if you wanted to throw something out there that was bad about your opponent, well, really, the only way you could do that is to do it way in advance. Today, you can have a surprise the day before an election or the day of the election, and hope you catch some people as they're going to the polls. So these are changing times, and I've got stories. First of all, I'm going to show you the two sides of what the truth is today. There's just things. An example would be the free speech, loving, peaceful protesters, and what they really are when somebody comes in and questions anything. We'll do a little bit on that because it's fascinating. As I said, SLPC, the Southern Law, is really in trouble. That's the only way to put it. The Southern Law situation is going to blow up in their face. It became a huge, massive financial deal. The fraud was going crazy, kind of like in Minnesota, where everybody all of a sudden had Bentleys that was, running the Leering Center. And all of these things are starting to come out because somebody actually cares. And that's really what this is about. And what a lot of my show is about is that, when we have a group of people that are just lying to your face and nobody's saying, excuse me, that's a lie, you may never know the truth. Now, Leslie Stahl said, when she was talking to Trump that, well, he can't say those things because it's not true, and we don't let that stuff on 60 Minutes. You might remember that. Then the truth actually comes out. I'm going to share that with you today also. So there are things going on that really make a difference for our country, and we have to figure out a way to get it out there. We'll also cover a little bit about the fact that the UK and some other leaders of the European Union right now are starting to go, hey, we got to get control of this immigration. It's getting bad. Well, why is that happening? And the answer is they didn't care. When Merkel in Germany was letting all kinds of people in, including every bad folk that could come in, and she was welcoming them into the country because we're so accepting, just about destroyed them. And now they're trying to fix it. Same thing's happening in England. You've got a group of people that are there that are just taking over their country. And eventually the actual leaders elected or appointed people for England finally are going to go, wait a minute. No. We're the leaders here. I think they are supposed to be. So those are things we're going to talk about today. So Maine is very different from California for obviously a number of reasons. But as far as the election goes, they're very different but similar. And here's what I mean by that. I don't really think there's anybody that's saying, I don't trust the election in Maine. I don't think there's many people that's being honest would say, I trust the election in California. And I got a video with a young lady, a TikTok person, that I would say about 80% or 90% sure is a Democrat that's starting to go, oh, wait a minute. Things the Republicans are saying is turning out to be true. But in this Maine situation, there was Graham Plattner last night won by over 70%. 70%. Now, he didn't really have anybody running against him to speak of, and the person that came in second was the governor, former governor, who jumped out of the race clearly because she wasn't doing well, and at the end said, I'm still on the ballot. Hey, vote for me. I'm still on the ballot. I'm not going to do anything to get your vote, and I won't do anything if I get elected. But Vote for me. Come on. You can do it. Well, how did that come out? So let's take a little schmeeker beaker at that. The old peeker is going to let us know a little bit about what's going on. So here is a map of Maine. And these little blue dots are all the voters that voted for Graham Plattner. And all the people that voted for Janet Mills, she got, look at these numbers. 142,365 compared to 38,279, compared to David Costello, who got 16,398. So 19%, 8%, and 72%. 72, Plattner. Now, if you're a Democrat operative that's got a brain bigger than the brain in the middle of a snake's head, you will probably recognize the fact that the guy at the top is a real problem for the November election. Now, you may say, well, no, this could be bad. This could be really, really bad for Susan Collins. And looking at 72%, you would say that, wouldn't you? But here's the point. There's 965,000 registered voters in Maine. Okay? So that 965,000 that we have as voters in the state. And let me go back to that for a second. The thing to keep in mind here. Hold on a second, pull this up. Here we go. Look at down here. You've got Portland, you've got Augusta, which is the capital. You've got all the main population is all this section down where the biggest blue is. The other blue goes along the coastline where all the rich people live. And then way up at the top is Kent. And Kent, Maine, is a pretty much a liberal stronghold right next to Canada, where there's a bunch of liberals also, where they are. Very different from Calgary, which is way west. But anyway, you look at this map and you think, wow, so there's 965,000 registered voters. So you put a little pencil to that, and here's what you get. First of all, the total number of people that actually voted was only 20% of the registered voters. That means that 1 out of every 5 actually went and voted. And there's I would say, a relatively high probability that those people that voted were couples that went together and voted, or they did their written ballot and mailed it in, or whatever the case is. I don't think Maine actually has I think they do actually have a mail-in ballot, but they have to have it in by a certain time. But my point is that it was only 20%. But the other point is all of this excitement, all of this amazing excitement about Plattner and how he is such a savior for the Democrats. That's what they were saying at the beginning. He got a total of 15% of all the people that voted. 15%. So how excited are they really? Are they really about this guy? It's not that much. The Sonny Hostins of the world that's on The View, who said I would hold my nose and vote for him anyway. Well, here's an example of why that's not even happening really to a point you'd like to think for the guy that's supposedly going to beat Susan Collins and come into the Senate. God save us if that happens. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what the Maine voters are going to do. But, as much as I dislike what Susan Collins does, as much as I can't stand the fact that she goes against Trump so many times, and I know she can't stand the guy. And I get that. If you don't like him, you don't like him. But, you should vote for what's right. Well, what did she do yesterday? She voted for the SAVE Act. So now we should be able to get that taken care of. We got to get that taken care of. We have to. There's other elections that occurred that I'm not even getting into today because they're kind of like, yeah, so what's? Each one counts, don't get me wrong. But the Republican side of some of these people that ended up winning their primaries, they're going to beat them, most likely. So with that said, how do we get past the bad press, excuse me, not the bad press, the press that is bad about telling you the truth? And I want to kind of shuffle some things around here for a second because I think that I want to show this to you first. This is the gal I was telling you about. She's a TikToker. She looks like she's probably in her 20s, might be a college student. I don't know. I don't know who she is. But she's coming to the realization, which I've been telling you all along in my shows. I've been saying, look, this is becoming an instance of the younger people. I'm talking about the ones that are coming in now. That these people that are coming in are starting to look at politics differently than the generation just before them. Because they're starting to question things. And I think it's because the have you had enough yet concept, what you get slammed into your head from the time you're in first grade, going through school, and you're saying, what's 1 + 1? And they say 3. And they say, well, that's because you're a Republican. If you were a Democrat, you'd know it's 2. I have no evidence of that. I'm making that up. But they just keep throwing stuff at you. And then you hear something else and you go, wait a minute, that doesn't seem right. And as you grow up and as you get older, you start seeing things. And if you just accidentally run into something that's different than what you continually hear, it causes you to say, wait a minute, what's going on here? Well, this is a young lady that can give us somewhat of an example of this. This is a little bit long, but it's worth seeing because she points out what the major news people are, who they are, and what they are. So watch this. I think you'll find this interesting.
I'm really just starting to discover that Republicans were right about so many things. I had made a video talking about my discovery of the fact that there's fraudulent voting in the United States of America, and I did my research on it. So I thought to myself, what else do the Republicans say that annoys me? But they're probably right. And the first thing that came to my mind was fake news. So there are 5 major news outlets that are considered the largest media conglomerates and TV networks by audience and revenue. And we're just going to go through them real quick because I was shocked just going through this bullet point. The first one is ABC. Who owns ABC? Walt Disney. Second one, CNN. Who owns CNN? The Warner Bros. Third one, who owns CBS? Paramount. So you're telling me people that make cartoons and make-believe entertainment, the people that are leading in entertainment, are also making entertaining news. 4, the biggest one that the Trump administration gets onto, NBC, guess who owns them? Comcast. And then you might be asking yourself, what's that? It's a giant company. Guess who owns part of Comcast? BlackRock. Do I need to say anything more? Okay, Fox is number 5. They are one of the better ones. I am still a little bit on edge because the CEO of Fox, Lakeland, he says that he's economically conservative but socially liberal, and those two things contradict each other. Because if you're economically conservative, that means you're pro-capitalism, and capitalism promotes individualism, and you cannot promote individualism socially if you're of the liberal ideology. Because liberalism coincides and supports socialism. So those two things quite literally do not mix. So yeah, the Republicans are right about this one too. We cannot trust our news sources.
That's a little eye-opener, isn't it? It's, I don't know how to describe it other than we are starting to get people to recognize where we stand. And when I say where we stand, what people believe, what people know, what people don't know, and it's kind of funky, if you will, that we have this young lady who is pointing out these corporations that own these broadcast systems. I mean, first of all, the one thing she didn't mention and she doesn't think about is the billions of dollars it takes to own and operate a major network. You watch, you go to a any kind of a live event where there's somebody going to be there. Let's say Trump's doing a rally, or there's a primary and they're doing for the primary, they're doing a debate, and all the networks are going to be there. Do you know how many hundreds of people it takes to do that? I've got a friend that he's with CNN, and he travels literally all over the world. He travels with one of the news people. I assume he's still doing that. I don't know. But my point is that all of this time that they've been going there and doing these things, it's not just the camera guy and the news person. There's a whole crew. All these people that have to haul the gear, all these people that have to set everything up, to get the lights right, to do this and that. You can't do what I do with my little itty bitty studio here and set up a mixer and a microphone and a camera and a couple of cameras and put on a show. When you go out, there's a lot to it. And so it takes a lot of money to do it. The problem is that they have an agenda, and the agenda is the problem. When who was it that bought? It was the guy that owns Amazon. He bought the newspaper. Why can't I think of his name right now? And he buys the newspaper, and really wanted to create this news source with a lot of information. Of course, goes for his politics, and he's almost out of business because people don't want to keep hearing that. That's why you don't see Newsmax. That's why you don't, not Newsmax, News Magazine. There's all kinds of companies out there that keep pushing the same stuff that it's hurting them. So we'll see what happens. And then you've got all the TikTokers, the YouTubers, the Neil Frames of FramersView. You're going to have all of those kind of people. But it's okay, because the smaller guys will either have no viewers or a lot of viewers, and there's a lot of traffic out there. There's a lot of people doing shows. So they are getting a lot of the big networks' eyeballs. So speaking of eyeballs, this Southern law inquisition yesterday, Jim Jordan, a lot of people, of course, Jamie Raskin had to make a fool of himself. All of the people that are doing this hearing with the folks from Southern Law, I don't know what it's called, Southern Law Protection, whatever you want to call it, billions of dollars. But watch that. This is from before the hearings were going to be done. This goes back to the end of April, when it was announced that they were going to have to go in and testify. And you get this, and then we're going to see the things after that, and it'll give you an idea why we have to keep telling people about this, because it makes a difference. Watch this.
As we reported to you with breaking news on Tuesday, we told you that the Southern Poverty Law Center was hit with an 11-count indictment by a federal grand jury in Alabama. Now the House Judiciary Committee has sent a letter to SPLC President Brian Fair, letting him know that it's not just the Justice Department looking into this organization. In a letter, the committee chair, Representative Jim Jordan, demanded that the SPLC hand over a trove of documents showcasing where the money went and, perhaps more importantly, any communications with the administration and former President Joe Biden. Now, the SPLC has until April 30th, that's just next week, to turn over this requested documentation. The Department of Justice charged the organization with several counts of wire fraud, false statements to a federally insured bank, and conspiracy to commit money laundering, alleging the group defrauded donors for more than a decade. Listen, Michael, all of this ridiculous, but I want your thoughts about what is going on here and what Jim Jordan is doing.
Well, Jim Jordan is doing the bidding of Donald Trump and the white supremacists and the neo-Nazis, the white supremacists and white nationalists that Donald Trump gave a pardon to because they were involved in the January 6th insurrection. The headline from the New Republic says it best. The Justice Department sides with the Ku Klux Klan. That's the name of the article from the New Republic that talks about the charges coming from Trump's Justice Department.
The Supremists. Is that group from Detroit back in the 70s, 60s? The Supremists? Oh no, that's a different one. Look, there's free speech. You can say what you want. As long as you don't hurt somebody, threaten somebody, you can spew the stupidity all you want. But she was very clear. You could tell from the beginning she's pissed off about this, that there's going to be any kind of a hearing. They can't let the truth come out because it's the end if they do. And before I go to the questioning that was done yesterday, I want to give you an example of what, and I wrote this down, the peaceful free speech bunch. Now, that of course is are the people that are out there to protect our free speech, to be able to say what you want to say, and you want to be able to allow people have to be allowed to speak, and they have to be able to get into the immigration centers, and they have to hurt people that are against the abortion world, and all those kind of people that are free speechers. This video that I'm about to show you, again, before I want to go into the Southern Public Law Center situation, about how these must-have free speech people are. Now, there's a young lady who decides to go in with a microphone. If that was my daughter, there's no way in hell I'd have let her done that without some more protection. But she goes in there to ask some questions. And the free speech folks, watch how they make sure free speech doesn't continue, including the idiot that has a Charlie Kirk head on his head and plays dead and does all kinds of stuff because he's a jerk. Total jerk. But watch what she goes through. This is amazing.
The whole world will watch how you are acting towards women and see that you are not the side
So as soon as she says, "So what is a fascist?" and of course, the idiot with the Charlie Kirk head on can't possibly say what a fascist is because, well, first of all, they have no idea. They don't even know why they're there. They have no idea why they're even participating in this, other than they don't have to go to work. They don't have to do anything other than go out there and make a fool of themselves, and they get paid by whoever is putting on these programs. But when you think about what you just saw there, you know, with the deal at the beginning, trying to shut her up because she was saying something that wasn't what she believed. Now, let's reverse it to the great Charlie Kirk, who, when he presented a situation that they didn't like and they wanted to argue it, he put his microphone down and let them speak. That's free speech. And would he argue the points after they had done that? Of course he would. But he didn't keep interrupting. He certainly didn't have a siren going to keep them from hearing. They didn't throw water. He didn't throw water on people when they were saying what they didn't want to hear. That's not free speech when you do that. That's not peace-loving. That's not peaceful. When you try to stop cars from going in and out of the detention centers for immigration, I don't understand why they don't just surround all of these people and arrest them all. Just arrest them all and do that until people say, "Yeah, I'm not going down there." They're out in the middle of the street. They're stopping traffic. They're stopping entry into the buildings. They're threatening people there. All of those kind of things. Let's arrest them for a while and see how long that lasts. I don't know why we don't do that. I get it that it's free speech, but if they're over the boundaries of free speech, I remember when I was a kid, you know, there were protests when I was a kid for sure because of Vietnam. And, you know, first of all, you had to have a permit. If you didn't have a permit, you couldn't do it. Secondly, most of the time, you were not allowed to be in the street. You had to be on public sidewalks. You couldn't go onto a private property. All of those things. If you broke that rule, you got arrested. And you were never going to get a permit again. For some reason, we don't seem to follow that or believe that or care about that. So I don't know what to think about that other than somebody needs to care. That's my thought. I'm sticking with it. So Jim Jordan, this guy is, you know, everybody that loves Trump, loves the fact that he, you know, is strong, loves the fact that he doesn't give in. Jim Jordan, who I don't think would be a good presidential candidate. I think he, kind of like I was talking about coaches yesterday, and, you know, some guys just don't belong as NFL head coaches, but they're great special department coaches, you know, offensive director, defensive, whatever those positions that they're in, that they're better at that than being a head coach. It's the same thing with presidents. Some people are just going to be good as president. And there's other people that are really good at stuff that probably wouldn't be something Trump would be good at. Jim Jordan's good at this. Watch this. I've got a few videos on this Southern law inquisition that was done yesterday. Watch this.
Mr. Fair, did the Southern Poverty Law Center use donor money to have field sources attend extremist rallies across the country?
Mr. Chairman.
It's a simple question. Did you use your donor money for that purpose?
We used donor money.
So yes or no?
Paid confidential informants to infiltrate extremist organizations.
Did the Southern Poverty Law Center use donor dollars to have field sources host extremist rallies throughout the country?
Not to my knowledge.
That's not what the indictment says. Did the Southern Poverty Law Center use donor dollars to have field sources grow existing chapters of extremist groups?
Mr. Chairman, as I said earlier—
It's a simple question, Mr. Fair. Did you use donor money for the purpose I just read? I'm reading straight from the superseding indictment.
And Mr. Chairman, the indictment will be managed and responded to by counsel in the criminal case that's
Well, you just
pending.
answered a question from Mr. Raskin concerning the indictment. He asked you, did field sources send information to the FBI that helped with things? You answered that question. I'm
That's
asking,
a matter of public knowledge.
That's in our
Mr. Chairman.
public filing.
did Southern Poverty
Chairman.
Law Center use donor money to have field sources create new chapters of extremist groups?
Again, Mr. Chairman,
Did the Southern Poverty Law Center use donor money to recruit new individuals into those extremist groups?
I assume you don't want me to answer since you're not giving me time.
This is perfect. I'm assuming you don't want, not giving me time to answer this because you don't want me to answer. This is a tactic. There's so much body language here. His wringing of his hands, the things that he does, that pause that he did, and saying that he's not being given the opportunity to answer. That's a way to avoid and then figure out what you're going to say next.
It's time to answer because that's a yes or did you use your donors' money for that purpose? Yes or no?
Again, those issues will be resolved in the pending allegations against the SPLC.
He just, I can't imagine being in there, having Jim Jordan coming down on me when you know everybody knows you've done these things. The things. So to understand the Southern Law Center, their whole purpose, quotes, was to stop the terrorism, the agitation, the dangerous people that are out there that are hurting the public. The Southern Public Law Center. Well, what they did then is they turned around, and one of the examples, we have evidence of this now, that they actually paid, I think it was something like part of $4 million went to the Ku Klux Klan from SLPC. So SPLC, I always do that backwards. When you're dyslexic, you never know where your letters are going to be. Point is this. They had to keep this thing going with KKK and other groups so that then they have revenue coming in bigger, and there's evidence of that I'm about to show you. There's more money that comes in if you can keep those bad folks, KKK and other groups, thriving and in front of the public so that they know what's going on. That's what their problem is. If they don't keep all those things going, then they don't get the money coming in. If the money's not coming in, they can't keep going. And they're all liberal haters anyway, so they got to make this work. Have to. So, Congresswoman Hegman from Wyoming. By the way, I had another story about Wyoming and a guy that abused some people after he had been released from jail in Wyoming. And I was going to put it out there to say, hey, this happens in small towns and small states where it's not liberal too. And then as I was looking at it, I was going, wait a minute, this isn't Wyoming as in Wyoming. It turned out it was Wyoming, Michigan, which is kind of the Kalamazoo, Michigan area. And that's where they were released after they had been indicted and all the stuff that goes on, and they bail and they get the hell out. I don't know if they do no bail or if they have a bail, but he was out. So now we got this situation with the Congress lady from Hegman is from southern Wyoming. I'm trying to think. I think she covers Cheyenne, Rawlins, some of the southern parts of the state, and she replaced Liz Cheney, who she was crushed by Liz Cheney. Excuse me, Liz Cheney was crushed by her after she had done this January 6th BS. So watch her talking to Mr. Fair.
For any business to remain profitable, there must be both supply and demand.
As for the Southern Poverty Law Center's business model, it needs to convince people that there exist certain types of discrimination and hatred in the United States, and that it alone has the expertise to identify, target, and eradicate it. A lack of such discrimination and hatred would render the SPLC's existence obsolete. And that is largely what has happened in America. So what is a business to do when its very existence is threatened by a dramatic decrease in the scourge that it exists to combat? What happens when racism, for example, is largely a thing of the past? The Brain Trust at SPLC came up with their own unique solution to this conundrum. They decided to fund the very hatred that they claim to be fighting against. And like magic, the money has continued to roll in. In fact, advancing hatred has become quite profitable for the SPLC, as in 2024, the organization had over $829 million in assets, an endowment of approximately $738 million, and $129 million in revenue.
And as I said, this is what I was talking about with they'll go out and they will push the KKK and other terrorist organizations to keep them on track to do the bad stuff, so that then the Southern Poverty Law Center can turn around and say they're fighting these people, and they raise the money. They get hundreds of millions of dollars to be able to make their case, when in the background they paid two KKK people to stay in the KKK to keep them going. That seems to me the most smarmy we've seen in a while. But with that saying that it's smarmy, and that's true, fomenting hate is part of what she was talking about. So watch this other clip with her and Mr. Fair.
We don't fund hate groups.
Why wasn't the SPLC, now you're under oath, remember that. You are under oath here today.
I said we don't fund hate groups.
Okay, except the $4.1 million that you gave to the KKK, the National Socialist Movement, and the Aryan Nations.
Congresswoman Hageman, those are allegations that will be addressed.
You're under oath.
That will be addressed.
All right.
In the criminal case pending against the SPLC.
The SPLC also played a part in funding the 2017 Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, and you paid an organizer who drafted racist posts under the SPLC's supervision. You fomented the hate, and then you made bank off of it, about $80 million in the following months after that rally. But you didn't just make a ton of money that day. 3 people actually died, 2 police officers and a woman named Heather Danielle Heyer. So from the standpoint of your business model, making money off of hatred, you must say that that was actually a very successful day for the SPLC. Would you agree with that?
SPLC doesn't foment hate.
Well, that day you did.
I mean, what can he say? He's not going to say, because there's a trial about to begin. There's all kinds of litigation that's going on. He can't say, well, yeah, okay, so we threw $4 million at these organizations to keep it going, but it raised a lot of money for us. Yeah. I don't know. It makes me speechless sometimes to think about just how crazy these things are. So I'm going a little different direction from here, but not really, because I did a story early in the week, and I'm kind of coming back to it because we know a little bit more about what it was. And this is the issue of Kristen Welker, who was interviewing Trump, and Trump got up and walked out. And that's all they talked about. But there was way more to it. So first of all, what Jon Stewart, who is talking about this, what he says and what he talks about first. And then after that, we'll discuss the further points of this.
Kristen Welker nearly undoes all of the good work she did with one of the worst pleas in the history of journalism.
Mr. President, let's please, I traveled all the way to Wisconsin.
You can't leave, sir. I was in business class. Business. Mr. President, please, Wisconsin, Wheel of Fortune is on an hour earlier here. These people are savages. Their Chinese restaurants only serve Szechuan. No Cantonese to be found. We'll all die of consumption. But you know what? Maybe finally this moment will give journalists permission to not back down, to not just leave it there and move on, and to finally be honest about Trump's inability to be challenged in the moment.
I spoke with President Trump on Saturday, and we both acknowledged the complications during the interview posed by the rain.
Yeah, what? You were inside! There was no challenge from the rain? That. No! The point is, he wasn't aggravated by the rain. Donald Trump didn't storm out because of the rain. He stormed out because he was challenged, not because he was distracted. So maybe it's time we stop making excuses for that man in order to preserve access to his constant bullshit.
He agreed to sit down with me for another Meet the Press interview.
And I know I showed you this a couple days ago, but I wanted to remind you because they always, remember I've said many times, they're going to tell you a story, but they're not going to tell you the whole thing. They're not going to tell you the whole thing because there's too much mud there for them to be able to say that and tell the story and keep going with what they're saying. So imagine, I'm going to compare Trump to a prisoner that's in prison for being for murdering someone. And in the case of the person that's in the prison for murdering someone, they didn't murder the person. They are innocent. They just haven't found a way to be able to get the truth out. And then Trump. Well, slowly but surely, the truth is starting to come out about what happened on January 6th. And she being Kristen Welker, because Trump brought up what the press, said about this stuff and all of the things that happened with January 6th and the California election. He brought that up, and they're pushing back. But first, see this story. I'll read this with you, and then we'll talk about this. So Trump stormed out of NBC interview after being challenged on false claims. That's what they say. Trump walked out of the interview with the NBC on Sunday. The challenge was the false claims about California's ongoing elections and the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. I'll stop right there for a second and remind you the video I showed you earlier in the show with the TikTok lady who said, we're starting to question the legitimacy of elections. Welker asked Trump if the 172 people who pleaded guilty to assaulting police officers and whom Trump pardoned at the start of his second term deserved payouts. So she's doing everything she can to fire this dude up, and they know that he gets fired up. Trump, without substantiating, claimed that the FBI actually ushered rioters inside the Capitol and that the individuals only pleaded guilty out of fear of getting harsher sentences. Welker told Trump there was no evidence behind the claims, to which he responded, "There's a lot of evidence," without offering any specifics. Well, okay. So I've got a video I've hesitated showing, and I'm not going to show it today. The evidence, and people are always accused, I've got the evidence, Swalwell and all of the other idiots. And I have evidence of Trump being involved with the Russians, and just nonsense. And in a way, I'm a little guilty of that because I'm about to tell you about something that I'm not going to show you yet because I'm still working on getting the absolute truth on it. But here's the thing. There is evidence now of the things that occurred on January 6th that was never available to the defense in the January 6th hearings. That's rule number one in law. You have to share all of your evidence with the other side. And they didn't do it. Not going to do it. Wouldn't be good for us. So they just never put it out there. That's the same Benny Thompson that decided to get rid of all of the evidence because nobody would care about it after the hearing was over. Destroyed it all. But we've got this. And once I know for sure, I will play it, or portions of it. It's a little long, but I will play it. And it's important for you to see and hear and understand of why and what is going on and why are people allowing these things to happen. So as we run amok in our country, there's run amok that happens in other countries. And I've mentioned what's happening with the immigration situation in Europe. The UK right now is trying to figure out what they're going to do. So take a look at this. And I've got this and a little video that really is surprising, I guess. Right now, there are between 30 and 40,000 migrants living in hotels across the UK indefinitely, paid for by the taxpayers. It costs billions every year. It is a fact that many of the hotels are four-star hotels. The migrants get housed. The owners of the hotels make a ton of money. Taxpayers lose. Boo Trump all you want. This would be happening right now all across America if Kamala had won. We already saw it happen during the Biden years. I mean, they were taking the hotels in New York and turning them into centers for immigrants. Trump, without substantiating claims, sorry, I didn't want to put that in there. That was all of that. My apologies. So the point is this: when you've got that many people that are in hotels in UK, which is a small country by comparison to the United States, that has a smaller budget than we have, that has, they have their own problems, and they've let a lot of people in that they shouldn't have. And now they're looking at the billions of dollars. I would suggest that if you take Medicaid, the SNAP programs, and all of those things, all these for people that are provided benefits that don't qualify. The hospitals, you look at the hospitals today, the people that are in the hospitals, they're illegals, a lot of them, because they don't have money for doctors. So they go to the hospital, they get taken care of, and you'll never be able to collect on them. And guess who pays for that? The hospitals and the government. Because the government has to bail these hospitals out and support them because they have to take care of these illegals, because the hospitals have no choice. It's a do no harm situation. Somebody walks in there that's half dead, you got to help them. And that costs thousands of dollars. And then they get a room until they're better. And then they leave the hospital. And whatever address you've got to collect money, you're not getting it. Doesn't happen. They'll tell you right up front, I don't have any money to pay, but I'm dying. And that's where it goes. And it goes often like that in the UK and in the United States. So look at this video. I've got a little bit of the sound that's in here, and I'll try to read this with you. But this was a video that was put out in England. How many asylum seekers are in the UK? Well, at the end of March there was 33,000 basically seeking hotels. Hotel numbers peaked at 56,000 in September 23. Fresh figures show that they're dropping. How many hotels are in the asylum seekers? To use the asylum seekers? It's right now, it was thought to be more than 400 hotels open in September of 2023. Right now it's down to 210, so they're reducing it. This is an England. Is this likely to be a permanent arrangement? Labor has pledged to end the costly use of hotels to house asylum seekers by 2027. They've got a problem. They've got a big, big problem. And until they figure out a way to fix that big problem, you just wonder, can we get the illegals out? Can we keep the illegals from coming in? Can we find all the people that are illegally getting funds that could be working? I had a good friend, dear friend. He lost his wife. She was very ill, and trying to keep her alive because he didn't have enough insurance. He wanted Medicaid, and at the time, this goes back some time ago. At the time, you had to spend everything you had, sell your home, do whatever, to be able to spend all the money you can before Medicaid was going to help. It's not that way anymore. And if it's not that way anymore, why? And the answer to that is that we're a giveaway society now. But the problem is that those of you that watch this show and watch all the other shows that care about America and want to be able to live in this country because it's a great country are paying for this. And that causes all the costs to go up. And we won't get into the whole thing with gas prices because we know it's temporary, but that's going to get fixed. And I hope Trump does something sooner than later. But the point is, America pays for the weakness of our politicians and the dignitaries of other countries. And it just has to be stopped. So we now know, because of science, this is really scary, that getting rid of stopping open borders cause climate.
If we don't have open borders, it will destroy the planet?
Yes, what's happening here is a UK human rights group, as amplified by the UK Guardian newspaper in a breathless article, has revealed that ICE deportations, the immigration deportation flights conducted by the Trump administration, are, quote, accelerating the climate crisis, unquote. And they did an analysis, and they had fancy charts showing the Biden administration versus Trump and the emissions of the CO2 emissions of these deportation flights. And they've gone up, the CO2 emissions have gone up 88% between 2024 and 25. For first thing that would come to your mind is not the climate crisis, is that, wow, we actually are enforcing our immigration laws. That should be the first thing, that the flights have increased by 88%. But the most important thing is they're claiming that rise in CO2 emissions is causing a climate crisis and that we need to stop all deportations in order to solve climate change. And what's funny about this is, remember, it's only about, 5 years ago that Kamala Harris went down to Central America to find the root causes of the mass immigration to the southern border. And of course, what her crack analysis found, climate change was the leading contributor to the mass migration. So if we can solve climate change, maybe the migrants won't just flood the border again, because climate change will be solved. They'd have no reason to cross the border.
Man, God will control climate change. If you go, my brother, who's brilliant in so many ways, we were backpacking up in the mountains a few years ago, and he said, "Oh, look at that." He says, "You can see right here how the weather had changed." We were looking at some rocks, boulders, and the things that had occurred. You can see the history of weather with stuff that's here around us. And we've had warming, we've had cold, we've had frozen tundra everywhere. We've had all kinds of natural disasters that have caused things. Climate change does occur. But It's not because the jet took off of the ground with immigrants that they're getting out of this country. It doesn't. It's just nonsense. Final story. I've been talking about this. This is in addition to what I had been talking about. This is about Seattle. Wave goodbye to Seattle. When Seattle's new mayor, Katie Wilson, was asked last month if she worried about millionaires would leave the area in response to Washington State's 9.9% tax, she scoffed at the idea. You know, she said it's overblown. And she said, and if the ones that leave, like, well, goodbye. She accompanied that with a wave and a giggle. We hope Mayor Wilson will show up in person at Seattle-Tacoma Airport later this summer to bid farewell to Rick Barton, who co-founded the real estate platform Zillow. Everybody's heard of Zillow in Seattle. He just announced he's joining fellow startup kings Jeff Bezos of Amazon, Howard Schultz of Starbucks, in moving to low-tax states. Barton will remain as Zillow's co-executive chair, but is relocating to Las Vegas. Did we mention that Nevada has no state income tax or capital gains tax or estate tax? The taxes, guys, these wealthy people are the first on the line to take the hit, and they're the first ones online to get the hell out. It's happening in New York. It's happening in Seattle. It's happening in LA. You know, when it's really your money that you're seeing about to go away, if you've got $100 million, just 100, and I say just, like we all have 50, you know, and all of a sudden you have to pay 10% on that $100 million. Do you really want to lose $10 million? But more importantly, that $100 million isn't $100 million in cash. Most of it's unrealized gains. You don't have that money. Do you want to sell all your stocks to be able to pay the taxes? Of course not. Just another story to keep you informed. Thank you for being here today. I appreciate it a lot. Till next time, carry on.
Thanks for your support. Join the FramersView Monday through Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern.